This is the Ombabika compass. Now it becomes a very complicated story. The Ombabika was an 82-foot freighter passenger ship. Now it was on Lake Nipigon. Now how it got to Lake Nipigon, it was cut up in pieces, put on a tramway, brought up the tramway from Alexander Falls to South Bay. They reconstructed the boat on Lake Nipigon in 1906. Now it was used to ferry freight and passengers for the Northern Transcontinental Railway construction. That's the railway that goes north of Lake Nipigon. Now Nipigon itself, as a community, was the engineering office for this Northern Transcontinental Railway, and all the materials, men, and supplies had to go across Lake Nipigon into Ombabika Bay and then north to about 2 more miles into the interior for where they were constructing this Northern Transcontinental Railway. Now Nipigon received a doctor in 1905 that was in charge of all the workers on the Northern Transcontinental Railway, from Armstrong to over somewhere around Hearst. So there was a lot of area to cover. Now back to the Ombabika. That boat was working from about 1906 to maybe about 1917 when it was sold to other people. It was originally built by Revlon Frères, which was a competing fur trade company to the Hudson Bay, and they had a store in Nipigon at that time too. So they had also fur trade posts north of Lake Nipigon, and it was they must have made their money on that because there was a lot of supplies. They said 80 tons a year went across that lake, okay, both in barges and that boat itself. Now the compass on it was rescued after it sunk in 1936. Okay, so from 1921 to 1936, it was a cut-down version and used as a commercial fishing boat. So it sunk in Jumbo Cove in 1936. He rescued the compass because it went down just about 100, maybe 100 yards from his dock. Now it stayed in that family from 1936 until 2018. The grandchildren brought it up and donated it to the museum. So it has its numbers and dates and whatever on that compass, and Ritchie Compass still exists. I Googled it up and emailed them, and they said, okay, they went back in their books and said the compass was built in 1874 and it was repaired in 1876. But they couldn't tell me who bought it. So that, I mean, it was nice to know, but it would have been nicer to know who got it in the first place before it showed up on the Revlon Frères boat in 1906. Yeah. So this is, it was pretty well, very good shape anyways. And Ritchie Compass is still going today, and he was a good inventor. He invented these compasses that were the way they were stationed on your boat. So it went through some pretty bad weather to there. But the Ombabika itself, I mean, it all depends on who's running the ship as to how good they, if they can't read a compass, they can run aground, and it ran aground odd times. So in 1910, November 1910, it ran aground, and they said 5,000 men were in the state of maybe starving if the winter roads didn't show up pretty soon to get them their food in there. So yeah, it had an interesting It's an interesting life. Ombabika means where the rocks go up. It's an Indian name. So it was, and the pictures that we do have were taken by Mr. Armstrong, who was a engineer on the building of that Northern Transcontinental Railway. He took these pictures in 1909. And then we had our local Art by Art do the enlargements for us as a background for our information. Now, the story of the 7 men for St. Mary's, those men would have traveled up on the Ombabika to get to where they were working. 7 men for St. Mary's. They came because Canada called for them, industrious sons of the Norse, to hew and to haul and to quarry, to open a western course. Archaic landforms of the Precambrian shield, of water, the walk, the tree, reminders to them of their homeland, now obstructions all could see. It happened 1 month before March arrived, the winter of 1909, when the men were taken from us, then placed in their shroud of pine. The horses, great beasts of the Belgian breed, their shoes clove deep in the snow, taking 7 men for St. Mary's, their coffins in silent tow. The bells of the sleigh and the horses were tolled 150 miles. Gone were these men from their labors, from their hardships and their trials. This is the story of the crosses. Now, they came to light about 2005, maybe. I got a email from Norway, and this fellow was looking for where his great-great-uncle had died. He had information from Thunder Bay Museum, the old newspapers, talking about the gruesome journey and where the accident happened at Cross Lake in 1909, February 15th, 1909, where 7 men were killed, and one of those 7 men was his great-great-uncle. So he was interested to find that. So I was interested to find that too. But it was very hard to find Cross Lake, for the simple reason that in 1982, Toronto was changed to the name of Toronto Lake. So it wasn't until about 2009, say 2008 maybe, I got a bunch of fishing maps from Mr. Mills from Paddlepack and Speckled Trout. His father used in the 1930s, 40s when he was fishing here, and on those maps I found Cross Lake. So then I went to the regular map, and there was Toronto Lake, same shape, so it was easy enough to find that way. So there we had that, but we still didn't have the crosses. It said they were buried in our churchyard over here, and I checked with Reverend McClure, and they didn't even keep records until 1910, and these were buried in 1909. But then later on that summer, he was cleaning out the little shed behind the church, St. Mary's Church, and he found these 4 crosses. And they had the brass plates on it, and the names matched 4 of the 7 men. So now we didn't get his great-great-uncle's cross, but we got 4 crosses that matched 4 of the 7 men that were killed. So we know that that then is true. And we do have photographs of where they had the stone monuments, but we figure those were removed in the late 70s when there was a ruling put through that any unsupported rock in your cemeteries had to be removed or laid down so they wouldn't fall over on children. So I don't know where those rocks went, but we do have the 4 crosses. So these were when he did find out about his uncle, he chased around Norway looking where he was, because he was a surveyor, and so he climbed some of the mountains there, and he found where his uncle had put cairns up and stuff like that. So we're still in contact back and forth every Christmas or whenever we want to see how we're doing and how they're doing. And then after we did that Destination Nipigon video, he was really excited over that, because that really did showcase this part of our story. So what happened was, when they were killed on that 15th of February 1909, the next day they were brought down by or started out anyways by horse and sleigh, bringing the coffins down to Nipigon, which took 5 days. Soon as they got here to Nipigon, they had the coroner's inquest, and then the next day they were buried in the churchyard. But all the burial records are in the Thunder Bay churches, and he was able to get those, so we have copies of those too. But it adds to that story of our railway construction, because it's very hard to display a railroad inside your museum. So yeah, so we're lucky now that we have this, and then we can connect the Ombabika boat to that, because it was actually during the construction of that railway that the Ombabika was built.